Last week, several people in the small town of Millfield had gone missing without a trace. The entire community was on edge, and rumors started to spread about what might have happened to them. Some people thought it was the work of a serial killer, while others believed that something more sinister was at play. As the days went by, the town was consumed by fear and uncertainty. But tonight, something happened that would make everyone's worst nightmares come true. The missing people suddenly reappeared, but they weren't the same as they were before. They stumbled into town, disoriented and covered in dirt and grime. Their eyes were vacant, and they moved in a strange, jerky way that was unsettling to watch. They didn't respond to anyone's questions or attempts to help them, and it quickly became clear that they weren't quite human anymore. As the night wore on, more and more of the missing people returned to Millfield. But they weren't alone. They were accompanied by creatures that seemed to have crawled out of nightmares. Some were twisted and distorted versions of animals, while others were entirely unrecognizable. The townspeople huddled together in fear, watching as the creatures and their former neighbors roamed the streets. It soon became apparent that they weren't just wandering aimlessly, they were hunting. No one knows what happened to the people of Millfield after that night. Some say that the creatures took them away, while others believe that they were consumed by whatever had transformed them. But one thing is for sure, the town will never be the same again. And the people who lived through that nightmare will never forget the horror of the night when the missing returned.
Tina had been feeling down ever since she lost her wallet last week. She had searched high and low, retracing her steps and checking every nook and cranny, but it was nowhere to be found. So imagine her surprise when she walked into her kitchen tonight and saw her wallet lying on the table, as if it had never been lost at all. At first, Tina was overjoyed. She rifled through her wallet, checking to make sure everything was still there. But then a thought occurred to her: how could her wallet have been here all along? She had passed by the kitchen table countless times over the past week, and she knew for a fact that the wallet had not been there before. A creeping feeling of unease began to settle in Tina's stomach. She realized that someone must have taken her wallet, entered her apartment, and then left it on her table for her to find. The realization sent shivers down her spine. Suddenly, she heard a creaking sound coming from her bedroom. Her heart racing, Tina realized that someone was in her apartment. She knew she had to act fast, so she grabbed her phone and ran out of the apartment, dialing 911 as she went. Within minutes, the police arrived at Tina's building. They searched her apartment thoroughly, but found no sign of an intruder. However, as they were about to leave, one of the officers noticed a small window in the guest room that was slightly ajar. Upon closer inspection, they realized that the intruder must have entered and exited the apartment through that window. The police searched the surrounding area, but the intruder was nowhere to be found. Tina was left feeling shaken and violated by the experience. She knew she couldn't stay in that apartment anymore, so she packed up her things and moved to a new place. From then on, she always made sure to lock all her windows and doors before going to bed at night. The incident had a lasting impact on Tina, and she never forgot how vulnerable and scared she had felt. But she also learned the importance of taking precautions and being vigilant about her safety, no matter where she lived.
Last week, the small town of Redwood was rocked by a strange occurrence. The town's most famous statue, a beautiful marble sculpture of a woman, had vanished from its pedestal without a trace. The entire town was left in shock and confusion, with no leads on who might have taken it or why. But tonight, something happened that would make everyone's blood run cold. The statue suddenly reappeared in the center of town, standing upright as if nothing had ever happened. But something was different about it. Its marble features, once serene and beautiful, now looked twisted and sinister in the dim light. At first, the townspeople were overjoyed to see the statue back where it belonged. But as they got closer, they realized that something was horribly wrong. The statue's eyes, which had been closed before, were now open and staring directly at them with an unsettling intensity. And then, it started to move. The people of Redwood watched in horror as the statue stepped off its pedestal and began to walk toward them, its stone feet scraping against the pavement. As it drew closer, they could see that its once beautiful face was now twisted into a grotesque, almost demonic expression. Some people ran in terror, while others stood frozen, unable to look away from the horror before them. But no matter where they went, the statue seemed to follow them, its stone form moving with an unnatural fluidity. As the night wore on, more and more strange things began to happen in Redwood. Doors slammed shut on their own, windows shattered without warning, and strange whispers echoed through the deserted streets. The townspeople huddled together in fear, wondering what terrible fate awaited them at the hands of the possessed statue. No one knows what happened to the people of Redwood after that night. Some say that the statue took them away, while others believe that they were consumed by the same evil that had possessed it. But one thing is for sure, the town will never be the same again. And the people who lived through that nightmare will never forget the horror of the night when the missing statue returned.
Alex was always an exceptional thief, but he knew that stealing the priceless painting from the museum would be his most ambitious heist to date. He spent months meticulously planning the job, studying the security system and the museum layout until he knew it like the back of his hand. Finally, last week, he pulled off the heist of a lifetime, stealing the painting without raising any suspicion. The police, however, were on his trail, searching tirelessly for any leads. Alex made sure not to leave any evidence behind. Nevertheless, tonight, the police finally got a lead and surrounded an apartment building where they believed Alex was hiding. Alex was hiding in one of the apartment rooms, clutching the expensive painting tightly. He knew that if the police came in, they would damage the painting, and all his hard work would be for naught. He threatened the police not to come in, hoping to stall them. For 13 long hours, there was a tense standoff between Alex and the police. Finally, the police broke in and arrested him without damaging the painting. The painting was recovered, and Alex was sentenced to jail for his crime. 3 years later, Alex sat in a plush sofa chair, sipping coffee in his luxury living room. The expensive painting was hanging on the wall, a testament to his thieving abilities. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Alex went to answer it. He saw a person who looked exactly like him standing outside the door. They hugged and walked into the house together, admiring the painting on the wall. It turned out, the person sitting in the living room was not Alex after all. It was his twin brother, Howard. The truth was, Alex and Howard's grandfather had been the painter who created the expensive painting. However, the government seized the artwork and displayed it in the museum. Alex and Howard vowed to steal the painting back, and they planned the heist together. Alex took a counterfeit painting and hid in the apartment, waiting for the police to come and arrest him. This gave Howard enough time to bring the real painting and escape. With all the police force chasing after Alex, Howard had enough time to bring the real painting and escape without getting caught. Alex had spent 3 years in jail, but he finally felt free. He and Howard had accomplished their goal and now had the painting to prove it. They sat together in the living room, admiring the painting on the wall, knowing that their grandfather would be proud of them for reclaiming it from the museum.
I had been a detective for a long time, and I had seen my fair share of disturbing cases. But the case of the missing girl had shaken me to my core. We had searched for her tirelessly for a week, and just when we thought all hope was lost, she had been found alive. When I arrived at the scene, the girl was barely conscious, and her mind was not clear. She was unable to give us much information, but we knew that we needed to act quickly to find the person responsible for her kidnapping. The whole town was up in arms, angry and desperate for justice. We followed every lead, and eventually, we were able to catch a suspect. It was a man who fit the description provided by the girl, and we were sure that we had the right person. But something didn't sit right with me. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something off about the girl's story. Then, something happened that chilled me to the bone. I was standing outside the interrogation room, where we were questioning the suspect, when I accidentally caught a glimpse of the girl through the one-way mirror. She had an eerie smile on her face, one that made me feel uneasy. It was then that I realized the truth. The girl was not a victim at all, but the perpetrator of the crime. She had kidnapped and tortured the man, and then pretended to be the victim. I was in shock. How could someone so young and seemingly innocent commit such a horrific act? But the evidence was there, and we had to act fast to bring her to justice. We apprehended the girl and took her into custody, but the incident had left a permanent scar on me. It made me question everything I thought I knew about people and their motives. The once close-knit community was now left to grapple with the aftermath of the deception. It was a harsh reminder that evil could be hiding in plain sight, and that even the most innocent-looking person could have a dark side.
I worked the late-night shift at the counter of an old, run-down hotel on the outskirts of town. It's a quiet night, just like any other, until a man walks in and asks for a room for 3 days. As I prepare the key, I notice that the man looks familiar. It's not until I glance up at the TV on the wall, displaying the face of a wanted murderer, that I realize who I'm dealing with. The man standing in front of me is the same person the police have been searching for all week. Trembling with fear, I try to remain calm and act natural. I hand over the key and watch as the man walks down the hallway to his room. Once he's out of sight, I know I have to do something. I quietly pick up the phone and dial 911. When the operator answers, I speak in a hushed voice, telling her about the man in room 212, who I believe to be the wanted murderer. I describe the man's appearance and the car he drove to the hotel. The operator assures me that help is on the way, but advises me to stay put and not do anything to alert the man. I hang up the phone and sit nervously at the counter, waiting for the police to arrive. Minutes pass like hours, and I hear nothing but the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I'm terrified that the man will somehow sense that something is wrong and come after me. Finally, the sound of sirens fills the air, and I breathe a sigh of relief. I watch as several police cars pull up to the hotel, and officers rush inside, guns drawn. Moments later, the man in room 212 is arrested without incident. The police thank me for my bravery and quick thinking and assure me that I did the right thing. As I sit alone in the empty hotel lobby, I feel a strange mix of fear and relief wash over me. I know that I've narrowly escaped a terrible fate and that my life will never be the same again. But I also feel a sense of pride, knowing that I played a small but important role in bringing a dangerous criminal to justice.
It was a routine flight from City Abuma to City Baibar. The plane was a modern aircraft, packed with passengers from all around the world. The crew was experienced, and the weather was clear. However, something inexplicable happened midway through the journey. As the plane crossed the ocean, it suddenly disappeared from radar screens. There was no communication, no emergency signal, no sign of distress. Authorities searched the area, but they couldn't find any trace of the missing plane. The passengers' families were devastated, and the aviation community was left in disbelief. 8 days later, there was still no trace of the missing aircraft. The search teams combed the ocean for any clues, but they found nothing. It was as if the plane had vanished into thin air. Tonight, an air traffic controller at the airport of City Baibar noticed a blip on the radar screen. At first, they thought it was a technical error, but then they realized it was an aircraft. The airport was immediately notified, and emergency services were put on high alert. The plane landed safely, and the passengers disembarked, disoriented and confused. The passengers were taken to a nearby medical facility for a checkup, and that's when the mystery deepened. They all believed they had only been on the plane for a few hours, but in reality, it had been over a week. The crew was equally perplexed. They had no memory of the missing time. Rumors started to circulate that the plane had accidentally time-traveled, but nobody knew for sure. The authorities launched an investigation, but they found no evidence of any technological malfunction or tampering. The passengers and crew of the missing flight had returned, but they had returned changed, uncertain of what had happened and why they had lost a week of their lives. The mystery of the flight would linger on, haunting the aviation industry and the families of the passengers for years to come.
I have always been a hardworking employee in the office. I love my job and take great pride in my work. Last week, I noticed that my stapler was missing. I searched high and low for it but couldn't find it. I didn't give it much thought, assuming that I must have misplaced it somewhere. Tonight, I was working overtime alone in the office. I had a deadline to meet, and the only way to finish my work was to stay late. As I walked to the coffee room to grab a cup of coffee, I passed by John's desk. I noticed that his drawer was slightly open and saw my stapler lying inside. I was furious that John had taken my stapler without my permission. After noticing my stapler in John's drawer, I couldn't resist peeking through the opening of the drawer. I noticed a stack of papers that caught my interest, so I carefully took them out and began to flip through them. Much to my horror, the papers contained numerous photos of me that I had no knowledge of being taken. They included pictures of me walking home, waiting for coffee, and even some taken inside the office. This revelation led me to realize that John was a stalker. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I felt violated and scared that someone had been watching my every move. The following day, I told my boss about it and showed the evidence I found in John's drawer. My boss took the matter seriously and demanded to search John's desk, revealing more incriminating photos of me and other female colleagues. As a result, John was immediately terminated from his position. I was grateful that I found out about John's true intentions before anything worse could happen. I learned that sometimes it's important to trust my gut feeling and not ignore the signs that something is wrong.